Well, good morning. Hope you all had a wonderful weekend. Thank you for starting your Monday with us here on First Take as we honor the great Martin Luther King Jr. today. Skip Bayless and Molly Karam here with you in Bristol. Stephen A. joins us from Cleveland. Hi, guys.
What's up? What's up? How y'all doing?
Good.
Well, I'm sorry about your Super Bowl team. Kind of sorry.
Yeah.
A little bit sorry.
That's your definition of rubbing it in. It doesn't work.
It doesn't work?
It's all right.
I thought
it's
it
all right.
worked. I can just see it written all over your face.
They're not a New York
okay.
team. They're not the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'll be fine.
Okay, you got it.
All right, let's talk about how they lost. Carolina came out firing on all cylinders, manhandling Seattle, taking the largest halftime lead in franchise history, up 31-0. However, in the second, Seattle came out hot and were able to put up 24 points on the board and hold the Panthers scoreless, but it wasn't enough. Carolina moves on to the NFC Championship game. Stephen A., how shocked were you?
Well, let me say this. When the first half was going on, I essentially tweeted that it was over. I can't tell you, Skip, Molly, how stunned I was to see what I saw in that first half. For Seattle to come out looking the way that they looked, totally inept. First play of the game. First of all, on the kickoff, they were talking about the turf and how it wasn't suitable. When they were talking about it prior to the game, they were talking about the turf and how that could have been potentially been problematic. Then Hauschka kicks off, and he almost slips. Then the first run of the game, Jonathan Stewart scampers 59-yard through a hole I haven't seen Seattle allow to be as wide all season long. Ultimately, they go in for a touchdown. And the energy, it's just buzzing in Charlotte, North Carolina. It's absolutely sensational. Then you see Russell Wilson on his first pass throw an interception to Kuechly. It was a pick six, and I was like, what the hell is going on here? And then ultimately, I saw a Legion of Boom defense that looked nothing like itself, that looked ill-equipped and ill-prepared to play this game. And I just said, oh, my God, I cannot believe this is ending like this. But nevertheless, as much as they fell apart and they were down 31-0, for them to come back to outscore Carolina 24-0 in the second half, for Russell Wilson and Doug Baldwin and all of these boys, whether it was their halftime speech or beyond, recognizing the fact that they just didn't want to go out like this. It just said something to me about the character of this team. I give them a lot of credit for battling back the way that they did, but Carolina should have won the game. They handled their business by holding on, and they were ultimately able to win the game. And Skip, for me, there's no other way to say this. I believe that losing the Super Bowl last year, the way that they did, had the kind of carryover effect where they ultimately ended up their talent, their skill, their perseverance, their willingness to play with one another and have that kind of heart. They're not going out like that. That's one thing. But the other thing that stood out to me is that if they didn't have such division in the aftermath of that Super Bowl, I don't believe they would have found themselves in a position where they were down 31-0. I know that might not make a lot of sense to folks, but it makes a lot of sense to me. But in the end, the team that should have won the game. Cam Newton and Carolina is moving on to the NFC Championship game because they went up against a team in Seattle that was ill-prepared in the first half to handle their business. They made the necessary adjustments, but it was too little too late.
I must tell you, I completely concur with your assessment down to the psychological level. But let me go back to Molly's original question about how shocked. To me, and you know I've been doing this for a long time, that was the most shocking second quarter playoff score I can ever remember. You realize, as you well do, that was 31-0 with 6 minutes and 26 seconds left in the second quarter. It wasn't just at halftime. There was still 6:26 to go. It could have gotten even uglier than 31-0, but as you know, then Seattle sort of found a little poise, regained some of its balance, and started off on this 11-play 66-yard drive that culminated in the failed 4th and 5. Remember that? So they ate up 4 more minutes of clock to get toward halftime. Could have, by the way, taken a field goal there. Could have turned right around, held Cam to 3 and out. And remember, Hauschka missed a 55-yard field goal at the buzzer of the first half. It that way, where if they'd really believed they could come back from 31-0, if they'd taken 2 late field goals in the first half to get it to 31-6, I don't know. We might be having a different conversation right now. Because I got to tell you, obviously I picked Carolina. I didn't close one eye in the second half. I ended up closing both eyes in the second half. That's how much it looked like a complete collapse to me by the home team. But back to my premise, the most shocking second quarter score ever. Most people yesterday were trying to compare it to, remember the early 93 wild card game at Buffalo, Houston at Buffalo. Remember, those two teams had played in the final regular season game. Houston had routed Buffalo in Houston while Jim Kelly went down and out with an injury. So now it's Buffalo's backup quarterback in the first round wild card game. And so to me, when it got to 35-3 off a pick 6 early in the third quarter, that wasn't all that shocking to me because the great Jim Kelly couldn't play. So it looked like Buffalo had just sort of given up heart for the game, and then you know what the rest of the story was. But now back to your psychological premise. I have been telling you all year long something was wrong with your Seahawks psyche. I don't know how to get too deep into this and describe it, as you called it division, I called it dissension, Super Bowl hangover, residue from that final decision in the Super Bowl to run or pass, and they chose to pass, as you know, and you have screamed about it all year long, and you should have. I get it. It affected this locker room. There was division, and it swirled around Marshawn Lynch. And obviously his mother helped bring it more to the public eye when she went public with it on social media. But it was clear that there were big, deep issues in the locker room. And so I kept telling you, this team effectively blew 7 fourth quarter leads this year. Now, I say effectively because the refs let them off the hook against Detroit on Monday night, and then Blair Witch Project let them off the hook in Minneapolis, obviously, a week ago Sunday. So they effectively blew those 2 leads too. So my point is, those were potentially 7 bad signs for the Legion of Boom. It's like something was missing in the mental makeup, the psychological makeup of that team. And then yesterday at the kickoff, I didn't know who they were. They looked like they were either in a trance or the real Seahawks had been abducted. I didn't know who they were. I realized the field was muddy. It was a mess on the toward the boundaries. But Jonathan Stewart just went right up the gut, and it's like, what are you doing? You don't do that. That's not you. And then it wasn't like Seattle piled up that many yards in the first half. It was just a little over 200 yards, 220 in all in the first half. So it was just key plays, like you said, the pick 6. Then Okung got beat on the second interception. The guy hits Russell Wilson's arm as he's starting to throw. And then Okung goes out with an injury. And they kept showing the Seahawks sitting over on the bench, and they're just like dazed. They don't know what hit them. But again, in the end, when they finally sucked it back up and said, okay, we've embarrassed ourselves enough, let's play, then we were back to the original premise. Most prognosticators thought Seattle would flat out win this game on the field, not with the points, just win it on the field. I thought by the second half it started to come clear to me. I think you were right. I think Seattle was a little better than Carolina, but they sure didn't show up for the kickoff. And as Pete Carroll said, it was like a microcosm of our year in that we started very slowly. He was talking about game to game, and then we finished hot. Well, did they ever finish hot yesterday? Because they basically blew Carolina off its home field. I know they got back on their heels, and it's the old prevent defense sort of mentality. But still, I saw in the second half, I don't know if it's the real or the not real. I saw last year's Seattle Seahawks in the second half. In the first half, they were who I thought they were all year. There was just something missing, something wrong with that football team.
Well, the thing about it for me, Skip, is that, look, on so many consistent levels, whether it's pundits or reporters who cover the games, or whether it's aficionados who used to play the game. You know, or players that are actually playing today, you constantly hear about the emotions. You constantly hear about psychological warfare. It's as violent of a sport as it is. It's not just about the physicality. It's about things that go beyond that. So if all of those things are true, how do we ignore the residual impact of last year's Super Bowl? When you make the worst call in history, you decide to have Russell Wilson throw the ball instead of Marshawn Lynch run from the half-yard line. You've cost the Seattle Seahawks, a franchise, a Super Bowl title. There's speculation as to why you elected to go away from Marshawn Lynch and go to Russell Wilson. You live with that all off season. Then you come into camp. Cam Chancellor's already disgusted because you won't restructure his deal. Marshawn Lynch is disgusted that you won't take care of Cam Chancellor. You struggle early on. Cam Chancellor returns. After that, you start winning games, but you're struggling to redevelop the cohesion that you once had. And then you do good enough to get to the postseason, but you're going up against the best team in the NFL on the road at that particular juncture. And while all of that stuff is going on, in the same breath, you still respect the coach, but you don't respect him as much as you used to. You believe in him in the organization, but you don't believe in him as much as you used to. You even got quotes from guys like Irvin and others talking about, we were saying we can't go out like this because we were down 31-0 at halftime. And what we want to do is make sure that everybody knows we ain't going out like this, because this is the last game for a lot of guys, for some of these guys in the locker room. This may be their last game in a Seattle Seahawks uniform, including me. That's what Irvin said. So think about the mindset. All of this stuff has been going on all year. It did just show up in Charlotte, North Carolina yesterday. The fact that all of this is going on just goes to show you, Skip, don't mess with a good thing. They messed up something special. Pete Carroll gave them the impression for so long, this is who our identity is. We are the Legion of Boom. We are the elite defense in the NFL. And Marshawn Lynch, beast mode. That's who our identity is, and we go from there. And considering the way that he performed in that Super Bowl, for them to ever turn away from him and to go the route of Russell Wilson, in that moment, I believe it's a damage that was irreparable, and it came home to roost. That's my personal opinion. I believe that if they walked in there as the reigning two-time defending Super Bowl champions, I don't believe they would have ever found themselves down 31 to nothing. I believe that in my heart.
Okay, just remember, because obviously in last year's Super Bowl, I was rooting for the team I picked, the New England Patriots, so I didn't have a problem with the last decision to pass instead of run. And remember, statistically, there were numbers that showed that Marshawn had not been very good trying to score from the 1 yard line. But all that matters for this conversation is that I believe you're right on the money about this. It really mattered in the Seattle locker room. There was a divide, there was dissension, and we'll talk more about Seattle later in the show about whether they can bounce back. But I will tell you, I was a little surprised last night that Russell Wilson volunteered about the year. It was the most fun year I've had.
That was interesting.
You know, because you just don't say it at that moment. You just lost. You just got bumped out of the playoffs by a team that's probably not as good as you are. And did Russell have a great? He had a breakout year. He had a Cam season where they both just broke out. And I can make a case that Russell has developed into an even better pocket passer than Cam is right now. He's phenomenal. He made some throws in the second half, took my breath away. The one into the corner of the locket, it was just phenomenal. It was big time, top tier quarterback throw. And then for him to say, this was my most fun year, it's not going to play well in the rest of that locker room. And we know there's been a, whose team is it? Is it Russell's team now, or is it still Marshawn's team? And remember, Cable tried to make the point before Marshawn came back, the offensive line coach, Tom Cable, he said he's going to have to, I'm paraphrasing, but he said you're going to have to accept Marshawn, basically through the press. This is now Russell Wilson's team. Well, it looked like that yesterday.
I think that they want him gone. I think he can feel that, Skip, and I think that's one of the things that have affected this team. And as much of a breakout year as Wilson had, Russell Wilson deserves all the accolades and all the credit that he gets this year, Skip. He truly, truly does. But it doesn't take away from what happened last year. And you've got people that think about Russell Wilson and they say, you know what, he should have changed that call in the Super Bowl. He should have said the hell with what Pete Carroll and Darrell Bevell said. I'm giving the ball to beast mode at the half-yard line. Well, the Russell Wilson that played in the Super Bowl isn't the Russell Wilson that was handed the reins this year. There's a level of cachet that was clearly elevated and aimed in his direction. Seattle's not wrong for doing so, Skip. It's the timing of it that was wrong. Had they won the Super Bowl by giving the ball to beast mode at the half-yard line and then said, Russell Wilson, okay, moving forward, it's your team now. Everybody there, I believe, would have embraced that.
Agreed.
But the fact that they picked the Super Bowl to do it is something that I believe had a residual effect and a detrimental, dare I say, from a football parlance, catastrophic result. And I think that that's what happened here. I really believe that's the reason why we saw Seattle look the way that they looked in the first half yesterday.
Wow.
And you talked about Jonathan Stewart running it up the gut. It had been 27 games since Seattle allowed a 100-yard rusher. Talk about his fresh legs.
Felt like he got 100 on the first play.
He got 59.